Good evening. Happy Tuesday to everybody. Thank you for joining us here at Seeking Bites podcast. My name is Dale and I am your host for this evening. And I have an amazing show lined up for you. A guy that I consider one of my best friends, a guy who I've really looked up to in the paranormal field. But today we are not going to be talking about his amazing journey into the paranormal field. We are going to be talking about another journey that he took, and like everything else in his life, turns it into a book. But before I bring out my next guest, I am going to talk a little bit. As you can see, I still have that QR code down in the bottom there. This adorable little guy right here. I'd like you to introduce you to William Bowden. He is 17 months old, and right now, little William here is in the fight of his life. He was diagnosed at about 9 months old with tumors in optic nerves in both eyes and tumors elsewhere. So right now, little William here is currently doing chemo and will continue chemo and on meds for the next 2 years of his life. So we are spreading the little word about this little guy. We are gonna say our prayers and let little William know that he is got a whole prayer warrior nation right behind him. So if anybody out there could say a prayer for this little guy, much appreciated to the Bowden family. And the QR code on the side here goes right to his GoFundMe page that was set up for this family to help offset the cost of his treatments and everything like that. As people know, like these kind of treatments can get very expensive, and we're just here trying to help out the family. And if you can't donate, please go to the GoFundMe page and just share it out on your social medias, because you know what, getting the word out there and just praying for this little guy is exactly what this family needs. So let's keep this young man in our thoughts and in our prayers, along with Shaylee and many others, Chris Fleming, Andrea Perron, and Tim Ria. All these people who are battling stuff right now, we really need to say prayers for our family and our friends out there who are going through a little bit of a rough time. And so I would appreciate everybody. So thank you guys so much. And with that, we are going to get moving here because I want to give this my guest here tonight as much time to talk about this journey as we possibly can. I'd like to say hello to my good friend Kim Sage, who just popped in there. Thank you, Kim. It's so good to see you tonight. Uh, but yes, it's and we have another Jason, my good lucker buddy. How you doing, brother? Glad you can join us here tonight as well. And yeah, if you got any questions for my guest tonight, please just pop them in on the side. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer any questions about what's going on. So, my gentleman tonight, he is better known for his journey into the paranormal. He is the been the researcher for the show Ghost Adventures from day one. I mean, I think they're on season 1422 or something like that. But no, but I mean, and a great show. A lot been around for a long time. Also, multi-time author, speaker, podcaster, and one of the very few people that I know that actually had the opportunity to do the world's famous TED Talks. So, with that, right now, I'd like to introduce my good friend, the one, the only, Mr. Jeff Belanger.
Belanger, comment ça va?
How's it going, brother? How's it going over there?
Going good. Good to see you, Dale. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Hey, it's an extreme pleasure, and I'm so honored. Like I said, to I mean, well, I've now known you for 11 years. 2014 is the first time we met up in a little town called Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan,
Yeah.
at one of the amazing Paracons that we get to travel to, the MI Paracon, or the Michigan Paracon, as some people know, which is sadly this year it will not be around. So it's still that weird thing to look at my calendar and not have it circled and say, okay, August. I know what I'm doing in August because now I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in August.
You
Maybe I'll
gotta
just go up
find
there and sit
something
at
else.
the bar and have a drink. I
Yeah,
don't know.
well, we didn't have a drink at those things. It tended to be more than a. It was like a bunch.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
no, I'm gonna miss it too.
I always told people that I'm going up to have a party and a Paracon's going to break out.
Yeah, totally possible that Paracon could happen at those things.
So yeah, no, thank you for joining me tonight. You have done some pretty amazing things in your life. Not only being the researcher for Ghost Adventures, writing close to 30 books now.
No, no, I'm only up to 16, but thank you for exaggerating.
Well, I guess when you look at your website and I've been drinking, you have a lot of books.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah.
But no, I mean, 16 books, that's still an accomplishment to be able to write about passion and something that you love to do. You obviously went to school for journalism and all that. So, how, before we get talking about why we brought you here today, what got you started into writing? Like, what was the passion about?
Yeah, so you know, I always liked reading and I liked stories. And then when I went to college, I fell in with the campus humor magazine and newspaper. They're just a wild bunch of people, and that turned out to be my tribe. And I liked writing. I liked the idea that you could tell a story and it could travel for you. You know what I mean? Like it could go out there to the world and have some sort of influence. And so I caught the bug early. I was like 18 years old. And then I said I knew I wanted to be around writing in some way, shape, or form. And so I kept writing for newspapers and then later for magazines and then for the web and anyone who would let me write. It's what I wanted to do. I was just sort of compelled to tell stories. And my paranormal career started. I told you this before, but it was around Halloween. You go looking for Halloween features, and I love that. I love the history. I loved interviewing people, and then that turned into a website. Then it started with books and so on. But it always started with writing. It always started with like, how do I chronicle a story?
So, when you're looking at writing something, like how is it? Just like you wake up one morning and go, you know what, this is really interesting me, so I think I'm gonna go do research on it and write about it. Or is it something that people say to you? Like, how do you just come up with, this is what I want to write about because I think people want to know about it?
Yeah. So I've done this long enough now that I let the story dictate what it should be. So, for example, I do a podcast every week where it's scripted. I script about weird stories in New England, ghosts, monsters, aliens, all kinds of stuff. And so someone might tell me a story or like I'll hear a snippet of something and go, oh, that could be a good podcast. And then I start working on it. Sometimes, for Ghost Adventures, it's, hey, this is the location. Let's find the angle. Let's find the story of why it's haunted, who's haunting it, and so on. So I'm always working on something. Books, though, books are a whole other animal. Books are an exorcism. There's no other word to describe it. So what happens is like you get this idea and you're like, oh, that could be a book. And then what you do is you do nothing. That's critically important to the process. You do absolutely nothing. And you let a couple days go by. And if it's still gnawing at you, like, oh, I really think that's a book. And then like you're in the shower and like you start like an opening sort of comes to you. And then you're like, no, 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 no. Still ignore it. Ignore it all you can. That's my best advice. Try to run away from it. Do anything you can to distract yourself. If weeks go by and that thing won't leave you alone, then in my mind, I'm like, okay, I got to deal with this because these ghosts are going to turn to demons. I will have to start dealing with this. And then it's sort of a compulsion from there. And then the only way out is through, the only way out is to just start putting it down and formatting it and putting it into a book. And then eventually you just let the little thing fly up in the air and see what it does.
I mean, it is a fascinating process. I mean, I know the last time we were at an event together, I really picked your brain because, yes, I'm diving down that deep hole of writing a book for the first time, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's a scary thought process. I mean, but at the same time, when you really get into it, it's like, wow, it's I'm enjoying writing. I'm enjoying
Good.
reminiscing. It's like a journey down memory lane for most of what I'm doing. It's a memoir about myself and the stuff that I've been through. But I mean, it's still it's rewarding, and in the end, I mean, it must be nice when you finish a book, it's done, it's out, it's released, and then all of these people are buying your books. And I mean, I watched you at many conventions we've been at together. It's like you come in with a stack, and by the end of the weekend, you leave with barely anything, which is nice because
Yeah.
it goes to show you that many people enjoy your style of writing because not every writer is the same, but what you're putting out there, people are very interested in. And I mean, you've written some pretty amazing books,
Well, thanks.
and the one we're going to talk about right now, and we're going to dive into this, and we're going to talk about your journey of the climbing Kilimanjaro. I mean, one of the most well-known mountains in the world. I mean, it's taught to us in schools and stuff like that. So, w- what was it that one day you just woke up and thought, "Hey, you know what? I've got nothing better to do, so I'm gonna go climb Kilimanjaro." It's like,
Yeah.
how did this come around?
It wasn't quite like waking up and doing that. There was a series of things that happened. It's funny when like with anything in life, you sort of look back and you piece together how you got there. Like at the time, it wasn't obvious, but in hindsight, it's pretty obvious. So, there was a whole series of steps and missteps that sort of led me there. For example, my last name is Belanger here in the United States, but of course, up north, it's Belanger, or in France, it's Belanger. So when I went to college, I had to take language requirements and I took French and I failed because the teacher looked at my last name and she thought I should be fluent. And I'm like, lady, I'm like a fourth generation American, like, why are you holding me to a different standard? So then I took Spanish, and Spanish was so close to French, I was getting confused. I barely passed. And I was talking to a friend and I said, I need a language that's unlike French or Spanish. I can't do the Romance languages. Obviously, I'm not smart enough. And she said, you got to take Swahili. The professor's amazing. And I'm like, Swahili, where do they even speak that? And she's like, Eastern Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, like that whole area. And I was like, okay. And so I took the class, and the professor was amazing. You might be old enough to remember, but the professor was the original lead singer of the doo-wop group Sha Na Na. Like,
Oh, Sean and
yeah.
I love those guys when I was growing up.
So everybody remembers Bowser, right? So
Yep.
like, so he was not Bowser, but he was. I mean, this guy opened for Hendrix at Woodstock, right? And so when the place blew up and the show blew up, he went to Kenya to find himself and teach English and learn Swahili. And his voice was amazing because he's a singer. And so anyway, it was amazing, a great teacher. So I took
Right.
Swahili 1, Swahili 2. I took other classes. My mom said, when are you ever going to use Swahili? I'm like, you never know, and so anyway, I get out of college. I was always a hiker. I always
Right.
liked hiking mountains. And living in the northeastern United States, we have some nice mountains with nice views, and I always appreciated getting out into nature. And as I got older, Kilimanjaro was on my bucket list because it's one of the 7 summits. It's the tallest summit in Africa, 19,341 feet, if you're keeping score.
Now,
This is
how many kilometers is that?
kilometers up. Yeah. So wait, 3.1 is 5. So 8 kilometers up, 9. I don't know. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So so I always thought about it. And the thing about Kili is that it's not a technical climb. So it's not like hanging from ropes and
Right.
rappelling and stuff like
Right.
that. There's paths that can get you to the top if you can just hoof it. And so I was sort of always thinking about it. But you get older, you start working, you have a family, you're busy. It's one of those things that takes a back burner. But then back in 2014, my brother-in-law Chris, he got this diagnosis that none of us saw coming. Um, Chris was Chris was losing weight, and he had it to lose, so he was just like, "Oh, I think I've been eating better," and we're like, "Okay, cool." But he was having stomach problems, and he went to his doctor, and his doctor ran some tests, and then ran some more tests, and then he got a call one day. Chris was a principal at a school in Connecticut, and he got a phone call from his doctor saying, Chris, I need you to come down to my office right now. Don't make an appointment. Don't just hang up the phone and come down here right now. And Chris knows that doctors never ever do that,
Right.
so he goes to the doctor, and my sister goes with him, and the doctor says, Chris, you have stage 4 cancer. It's metastasized. It's everywhere. You probably have about 2 years to live if you go aggressive with chemo and radiation. And, my nephew at the time was 3, they had a very young child. And we were all just like, what? Like, Chris was 42 or so, 42 at the time. And I'm like, we're all just, what? Really? And so for the next year, Chris went into a pretty bad depression, as I can only imagine what any of
Right.
us would do facing that. And then he was doing the chemo and radiation, and he and I got a lot closer as he was going through this process, because my sister sort of was like, in denial about the thing. Well, he's going to be fine. We're going to beat it. It's going to be okay. But we all knew it really wasn't going to be okay.
Right.
And so Chris and I got a lot closer. And he called me one day and he said, hey man, you're into some weird stuff, meaning the paranormal. And I said, yeah, that's fair. And he said, and I'm going through something really weird. And I said, you sure are. We're not supposed to know we're actively dying.
Right.
And so we talked about it. And time went on, and Chris was withering. And then fast forward to, oh God, it was 2015, 2016. It was the fall. And he was really starting to, like, he was getting pretty skinny from the cancer. It was eating him up,
Yeah.
and he pretty much needed a wheelchair to get around. But we were talking a lot, and then Thanksgiving dinner, which here in the States is late November, and he took a couple bites of food and he had to lay down on the couch. It was just all he could do. And then the first week of December, he went into the hospital. And he called me from the hospital and he said, I got to tell you what happened last night. I'm like, what? What's up? And he said, I was in bed, in the hospital bed, and all of a sudden I woke up and I was like 10 feet above my bed looking down at myself. I said, what'd you do? What happened? And he said, I'm afraid of heights. He said, I was scared and it was over. I was back on my body. He said, but it was weird. And he said, didn't even make sense. The ceiling wasn't that high. He's like, I was higher than the ceiling should have been. Right. He's
Right.
like, it didn't make any sense. I said, okay, and then the next day again, and the day after that, he was telling me this is happening like daily now. And it's
Wow.
not so frightening when it happens. He says, I just sort of let it happen, whatever it'll
Right.
be. And it's about, after about a week in the hospital, the doctors told him, hey, look, there's nothing more we can do for you. It's time to go home to hospice care because his organs are failing, And so he goes back to his house in Connecticut. And my family and I, we live in Massachusetts, which is about 2 hours away from where they are. And that weekend, we planned to go down to see him. And it was a strange trip because what that visit is, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is the thing that everybody complains about when they're losing someone close to them, right? They say, oh, I never got to say goodbye. I'm like, well, guess what? I've had it both ways. They both suck,
Right.
You're not supposed to know when someone's
Right.
going to die.
Right.
But
Yeah. It doesn't make it any easier.
no, I mean, yay. So anyway, I got to
Yeah.
go down there and I sat with him and we talked for like 3 hours. I walked in the room and he's the corner bedroom. So he had a window on either side and the sunlight was just coming in and he was golden. He was a golden person. And I know in my logical brain that's jaundice, right? His organs are
Right.
failing. His skin is yellow from organ failure.
Yeah.
But he's on morphine and there's an oxygen machine helping him breathe and he's glowing. And we talked for hours about this process he was going through, this actively dying process. And you realize like, hey, I'm dying too, right? I mean, you are, we all are. Like,
Right.
I don't have any sort of, anything on the horizon like he did,
Right.
but
Right.
we're all dying. And it was
Right.
so profound. And I said, hey, tell me about the out of body stuff. And he said, oh yeah, it's happening many times a day now. He's like, but now I see things. And I said, what are you seeing? He said, the first thing he saw was his house cat from when he was a kid. And he
Wow.
said, the irony is I didn't even like the cat. And I said, all right. But then he said he saw his grandma and he was close with his grandma.
Right.
I said, "What do you think this means?" Like, keep in mind, Dale, like Chris was practically an atheist near
Right.
the end. Like I mean, he was off for as long as I knew him. He was pretty much sort of an atheist.
Right.
I said, "What do you think it means, the out of body stuff?" And he said, "The best I can figure out is there's something inside this broken machine that's getting ready to break out and stay out." And he wanted me to tell my sister and tell anyone else who cared to hear it after it made sense. And so 3 hours went by, and it was time to say goodbye. But I didn't say goodbye. I didn't
Right.
use the words goodbye because
Right.
I didn't believe I would never see him again.
Right.
But I knew I'm not stupid. Like I
Right.
knew
Yeah.
I'm not going to see him in bodily form after this day. And I hugged him and I told him I loved him. And I was so grateful for how close we got over the past year. And I said, thanks. Thank you. And we went home and Chris passed away about a week later.
Right.
And and that was really hard on all of us. My nephew was 5 now at the time and didn't fully understand what was happening.
Right.
And we were all just like, oh my God. And then he was just a few years older than me.
Right.
So it was the following spring. I was at an event. We were doing a ghost hunt at this historic building to raise money to preserve it. And a friend of mine from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society said, "Hey Jeff, we got a fundraiser coming up." And I'd done stuff with them before. It was Light the Night Walk, where we just walked like 2 miles downtown and held a balloon with a light in it. And I think I raised over like $1,000 because of social media. People were very generous. And I said, "Amy, I'm really busy, but I'll help if I can, And she said, "We're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to help raise money to fight cancer." And Dale, it was like, in the movie, like the record scratches and everybody freezes in the movie, except like the two
Right.
people. It's exactly what happened. I just went, Kilimanjaro. And I said, "Well, when?" Because if it's in the fall, there's no way I could go. I'm too busy. I'm too booked. And she's like, "It would be March, 2017." And I said, "Oh, that's a good time of year for me." And she said, "Yep, we're putting a team together. You train, you raise money, and you go to Africa and you climb Kilimanjaro." And I just looked at her and I'm like, I don't know how many times, the universe holds out something on a golden platter for you.
Right.
But in my experience, it ain't that often.
Right.
And so I just went, "Amy, yeah, I'm in. Like, yeah,
Right.
I'm doing it." And that was it. And started to train with 5 other people from New England, all of us strangers to each other, all of us doing the same thing for the same cause, and with similar stories, like personal stories. Everybody, had some sort of effect that they were trying to, do this for. And I got so singularly focused on this goal, this literal goal, right? Mountains are always often metaphors,
Right.
like climb a mountain, but like this time it was quite literal. And
Yeah.
so all I could envision was using my Swahili. I'm like, "Hey mom, remember 20 years ago?
I
Guess
can
what?
do it, Mom. I can
I'm gonna
finally found that opportunity.
I'm gonna use my Swahili." And so yeah, we trained, and in March of 2017, we went over there. And um it was midlife crisisy, sure, but
Right.
I was in the best shape of my life. I was doing it for lots of reasons. And I could say it sounds all selfless to say, like, "Oh, I was doing it to raise money." I was doing it in Chris's memory. Sure, that was part of it. I was doing
Right.
it to raise money for cancer. Absolutely, that was part of it. But I was doing it for me, right? I was doing
Right.
it
Yeah.
because this called to me. And I could I do it, in my 40s? Like,
Right.
could I go do this big thing? Um and it was just so many things swirling together. And you land in Africa, and it's, man, that is another world.
Right.
I've been to other countries
Right.
before, like I remember going to Australia, and I was in Sydney, and I'm like, dude, this could be any American city anywhere. No offense to our friends in Sydney, but it felt
And, yeah, no, and yeah, whenever you watch something or see something, documentaries about Africa and the culture there, and like, yeah, it's totally different than anything you can see in North America, anything we can experience.
this was different. And the first time I saw the mountain, man, like it was you could put the picture up if you want. You got it there. The first time I saw that mountain in person, I was starstruck. It's like this to me, this is a celebrity, right? That's Kilimanjaro, 19,341 feet. Like
Right.
airplanes cruise at that altitude, some of them, Um, so, seeing this thing in person for the first time, it was just absolutely giddy. And and it's going to take 6 days to get to the top of the mountain, 2 days to get
Wow.
back down. And I mean, I
That
can show
that
you.
I mean that is I mean that is truly I mean just looking at it is it's something that, you see in pictures, so I can imagine what it's like looking at it with your own eyes in person.
Yeah, yeah, it was breathtaking, but also often cloud covered. We got a couple lucky glimpses, but this is the trail we took. So we came up the western side of the mountain and then basically looped under to come up to the summit from the east.
Right.
And it's funny, like, when we first started walking up the trail, I had this notion of, like what we would do. I would take a picture of my first footstep or whatever, but I forgot. I missed it. I missed the first step because I was so caught up in a million things, right? And when we
Right.
start, like, hey, that is literally a walk in the park right there. This photo is embarrassing, Dale. Like,
Yeah,
it
I
look
mean that looks like any nature
yeah,
trail.
totally.
If you like, I mean, yeah, like
Yeah.
Massachusetts where you live. I mean, this is probably a lot of the trails you walk on a daily basis. Like,
No, our trails are harder in Massachusetts than this. I'm pretty sure you could take a wheelchair on that right there, right? I mean,
oh,
if not,
really?
absolutely.
Wow.
By the way, this is
Yeah.
just day one. It would get
Right.
harder, but in the beginning,
Uh,
I was like, I don't even want anyone to see this.
just before you keep talking there, Dip, I don't
Yeah,
mean to interrupt you because I love this story, and
yeah.
I mean this is the most in depth conversation we've had about this, and I love it. Somebody asked, did you feel Chris with you as you were climbing the mountain?
As I was climbing the mountain, no, but we'll get to that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and one other question, my good friend Jason here, did you find any creatures or cryptids at the top of Kilimanjaro?
At the top, no, but a little further up the trail, ran into this guy. That's definitely a cryptid.
It's a mini Bigfoot. No.
It's a mini, mini, mini Bigfoot. So, no, I did not run into any cryptids. There weren't stories of cryptids. There were stories of ghosts that I will absolutely
Oh,
tell you
okay.
about as well. So, but it's funny that first trail. As I'm walking, I'm like, this looks like. I mean, woods are woods for the most part,
Right.
and then we got a little further up, and then suddenly I look up and I'm like, that's a monkey. Those are definitely not in my woods. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, we don't get to see those type of things when I'm going down through nature's trail.
no, and then I was looking at it and I'm like, okay, I've seen monkeys before, but they're in zoos and they're in cages. If this monkey wanted to leap out of that tree and tear my face off, I literally couldn't stop it.
Right.
But thankfully he had no interest in that. He just sort of watched us walk by as if like whatever.
You
Um,
wonder because of the area that it's in, and obviously that is probably a pretty well traveled area of hiking. You think they would just get used to seeing humans.
yeah.
So as long as you're not bothering them, they're not going to bother you because, they're probably thinking the same thing you are. Like, oh, that's fascinating. And he's probably thinking about, whoa, look at all these people. They're fascinating. Let's keep going.
They were looking for us to drop food is what they were looking for, 'cause
Oh, okay. Okay.
by the time we get to our camp, it was great. Our guides and stuff, we were singing
Right.
this Swahili song, and then we looked over like, "Oh, cute, a monkey's in camp." And one of the guides who was way smarter than us and local starts sprinting toward it. He grabs a whole loaf of bread and just darts off into the woods. Like, absolute free meal, was making sandwiches for him and his pals that night. So yeah, they're interested in us in that they know there's a free meal nearby because we're
Right.
stupid. Um,
and,
but
and
yeah,
you figure as long as they're well fed, they're not going to feed on us.
right, exactly. So we get to our first camp after the
Right.
first day, and it's pretty easy. Like, so
Wow.
there's my luxury accommodations. So I love hiking and I like being outdoors and all that. If you gave me the choice between sleeping in a tent or cutting off one of my fingers, I would at least ask you which finger, right?
Oh,
Because
really?
if it's the little one, gone. I would absolutely part with the little one in exchange for a real bed.
Hmm.
But there's no other way to do this, man. We got
Right.
a we got a tent camp. So this is about 8,000 feet above sea level, and
Wow.
and inside, like, this is this is me in my 0 degree rated sleeping bag. Um And I can tell you right now, like I didn't even sleep that night. Like I was on the ground, I was uncomfortable. I'm
Right.
like, what am I doing? I'm scattered. I'm worried about like the emails. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no cell signal. What if my family needs me? I am just
Right.
absolutely scattered, and I hardly slept. And it was
Wow.
really it was really daunting the next day. But then, we wake up and we keep heading further and further up, and then you get above the tree line, and it's pretty amazing. So now it's just brush. Now we're getting about like 9, 10,000 feet. The air's a little thinner, but you walk slow, and you can
Right.
you can kind of keep up with it. And keep in mind, we haven't seen the summit now in days because it was cloudy, and now we're in it, like we're just in the
Right.
shadow of it. Um, but you get up a little higher and you can see like, hundreds of miles out into the Serengeti and out into Africa. And a calm started to come over me. And this is something I didn't expect. It took a couple days, but after a couple days of on the mountain, no cell service, no email, no nothing. Um, there was this calm where I was like, oh, this disconnect that happened, and you could do it in your own backyard. Just turn your phone off,
Right. Yeah.
but we don't do it. That
Right.
phone is like attached to us, and we get emails and texts and everything else.
We're
And
we're always afraid something's gonna happen and we're not gonna know about it.
I know. And so suddenly, like, it started to this calm started to come over me. That was really quite beautiful. And by the end of the second day, finally we come around this last hill, and these clouds part, and I can see, the summit across. It looks like you could practically jog
Wow.
across there. That's actually quite a distance, but
Yeah.
it's just getting closer and closer. And the thing about Kilimanjaro is that it's a volcano,
Right.
and it is not an extinct volcano, right?
This thing could go off at any moment if it really wanted to.
Not only that, it's not a volcano, it's 3 volcanoes. That's the big
Oh.
one, right? Like that's the big one, the main peak, Uhuru Peak. But our camp the second night is the original volcano, literally like what's
Wow.
left of it. And the biggest mountains in the world, like the Himalayas, are formed from plate tectonics, right? That just pushes the mountains way up into the air. This is a volcano that created this. And we're
Wow.
like a stone's throw from where like humans first walked out of Africa. Like this is
Wow.
where it all like began.
Right.
Like there's like this drum beat to the land that you can just sort
Right.
of feel. It is absolutely incredible. So
So when you guys are doing this now, did you guys mostly just do this during daylight hours, or were you guys also hiking like during the nighttime through through these terrains and stuff like that?
right now, just daylight.
Okay.
We sleep at night in the tent, and then we hoof it during the day, and we do a bunch of miles. And when you get to a camp, like for example, each camp shows you how far you've come and how far you are, right? So this was the original volcanic camp, and how far it is to the next one, and so on, how many kilometers you can see. So the peak is now 33 kilometers from where we are right now. And uh that night it was crazy. So this is our tents, that night. And it was amazing, Dale. Like, so it happened to be a very clear sky, and
Wow.
the air is so clean. There's
Right.
no light pollution, no noise pollution. Planes don't fly over the mountain because it's too bumpy, so they go around
Right.
it. There's nothing above your head. And when the stars finally came out, my tent mate Brian is like, dude, you got to see this. And we go outside, and I have never in my life, like, holy crap, like,
Wow, that is amazing.
I mean, you are in the Milky Way. You look up and you're in it, I
Right.
mean, nothing but stars, and it was just incredible. And so what a different landscape. But now that we're above 10,000 feet, it gets harder because breathing is tricky. Like you can
Right.
feel the thinner air,
Right.
and it's just up and up and up. And the landscape starts to turn kind of otherworldly. I mean, the colors start to fade away, and it's beautiful. But then you see stuff like, I was waiting for the Lorax to jump out from Dr. Seuss, and these funky weird trees that somehow find a way to survive and live in this harsh environment. And like the color just drains as we get further and further up. And you know uh we're
Wow.
playing, though, like we're climbing on rocks just because we can.
Great. And
um
I mean, what an opportunity to to soak in such an amazing, so like the views, like I mean, like you said, it's nothing like you would see if you climbed up any other hill in Massachusetts or
Right.
anywhere else, because the views seem like breathtaking. Like every one should be like a postcard.
That's exactly how it felt, man. And the other thing too is I bought a nice camera to go with me because I know I'm such a goal oriented person, right? Like get to the top,
Right,
get to the top, get to the top.
right, right,
And you miss so much along the way. And so I got this camera as a way to like literally stop and smell the roses, like stop
right.
and take pictures of stuff. I want to document this, but I also want to, remember it and I want to see it. As we get further up, we did pass this plaque that was a very sobering moment. Um, I looked at this and I'm like, okay, in memory of Ian McKeever, I was like, all right, we were only at like 11,000 feet. 11,000 feet really shouldn't kill you. Like that's high,
Right,
but it's not crazy.
right.
And I asked our guide, I said, what's up with this? And he said, "Oh, he was killed by a lightning strike." And I went, "Lightning? Look, I've got carabiners and metal poles and like all this stuff on me. You're walking along, Dale, and like a cloud goes right through where you are. Like you have total visibility, and then like 2 feet because you're literally in the middle of a cloud that drifted right where
Wow.
you are. And some of them are a little gray, and I was like, so what happens if an electrical storm breaks out, right where we're standing? And our guide, Steve, was just like, he said, well, you drop your pack and you get in a fetal position behind a rock. And I was like, oh, good. There's a plan. Okay. I'm like,
There's safety precautions, and I mean, okay, yeah, as long as you don't have anything metal on you, then your rubber sole should help you out.
so I know, like, I know people die on this mountain, but a lightning strike was not one of the things I had considered, that
Right,
just,
you would think like falling down, bumping your head, got crushed by a falling rock or
yeah.
tree, or
Yeah. So,
yeah,
or
wow,
like,
that's
going up this beast, which we did, right? Like this is where it starts to get into like a more physical experience, into like a real
wow,
climb where we're just going higher and higher. And by the time we get to the top of this basically like 1,000-foot cliff, uh, I mean, we're above the clouds and we're staying above the clouds at that point. And it
wow.
was,
That's a fantastic photo, by the way. That's
eh,
that's
thank
that's
you. I mean, it's so what occurred to me along the journey too is that my backpack had everything I needed it in. You know what I mean? Like at home, I don't need bookshelves and stuff, but like I needed water, I needed food, I needed
right.
some layers of clothes just in case. I had some photos of my family. I had a photo of Chris and my nephew. I had everyone who donated to me. I had a list of their names so I could look at it in my tent each night because I didn't want to
Wow,
let any of them down.
right.
And you realize like everything I needed fit into a backpack, and
Yeah.
uh, and that's pretty cool, man. But as we start to get up higher and higher, this becomes like a real mental thing. And yet there was incredible stuff, right? Like these flowers that somehow flourished at like 13,000 feet, so high above the clouds, just absolutely beautiful. And this
But
just
you would think the 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 air up there, the it's like you said, there's no pollution up there, so there's probably, I mean, it's probably the ground is probably has lots of nutrients in it to keep stuff like this alive. Where in a city it gets filled with pollution because of smokestacks, cars, people.
sure.
Where this, but yeah, I mean, it's absolutely mind blowing that something like that can survive where there's no people.
I remember thinking, looking at these flowers, I was like, wow, it takes grit to make it up here, right? Like these flowers are tougher than your average flowers. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm up here too. It takes a little
Right,
grit for me to be up here. And
right,
we get soft, Dale, as we get older. When you're like 18, 19, 20, you're sleeping on a couch or in your car or whatever, nothing matters. You got grit.
right,
But then you get comfortable. You have a house and you're like you get used to a bed and all that other stuff. And it was nice to get out of my comfort zone,
right.
in my 40s, and that flower sort of reminded me of it. And but the higher up we go, like it becomes otherworldly. And it was, as we get closer to the summit day, um, I had all these thank you cards for people that had donated to me, and I wanted to hold them up at the summit. And at this point, 2 people in our team got turned down. We get health checks every day. Like, what's your oxygen levels like? Are you eating? Are you sleeping?
Oh,
And two
wow.
two people got turned down. And so I had Brian, my tent mate, take these thank you photos with the summit behind me just in case I didn't make it to the top,
Right.
because I didn't want to come home empty-handed. I didn't want to let them down.
Right.
And it was amazing. So this was the last day we were all together. And just to give you an idea, there's 12 of us hikers, and then the rest of those folks are our guides and our porters that helped get 12 people up
Wow.
this mountain.
That's a
Just
lot of people.
incredible group. Only a few of them spoke English, but they were blown away that this white guy from Boston could speak some Swahili. They were just like, wow. But nothing but such immense gratitude,
Right.
for every step. And now that we get to, like, 13, 14,000 feet, I mean, it's otherworldly. We're like Tatooine on Star Wars now. And we're making our way to 15,000 feet, which is base camp. And I'm looking at this mountain, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. And there's just all these broken rocks that looks like broken dinner plates. And I took that picture to show my daughter, to just be like, look, this mountain that's literally been here for a million years, well, 400,000, the main mountain, but more or less a million years, uh, is pocked up, bruised up. It's been battered by every conceivable volcanic force, weather
Right.
force, and everything else. And when you look close, sure, you see the flaws, but when you pull back, like, you see absolute strength and beauty. And that's what
Right.
beauty is. Beauty doesn't mean flawlessness. Beauty means you still stand after taking all that.
Right.
And when we got to base camp, this is base camp. This is the last night, last day, 15,000 feet. Dale,
Wow.
man, when you're at 15,000 feet, like, sitting there is okay if you really calm yourself and breathe, but to get up and walk, 30, 40 feet, it feels like you ran a marathon. To give you an
Wow.
example, when you're in the diner, those little skinny straws you use to stir coffee or tea, the
Right.
little teeny ones. So take one of those and just breathe through it. Right? Now go
I
for
I have asthma. I couldn't. I would just absolutely die with something that with that little air.
but that's what it's like. If you're calm and
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
sitting there, you can do it.
Right.
But now
Right.
get up and start jogging and just get
Right.
the air through that straw. That's what it feels like.
Wow.
Uh,
That. I mean, it's beautiful, and like you said, it's how so just to go back a little bit, like, how did you guys be able to train for such elevation, or were you guys able to do it? But I mean, I guess the real thing would not be the same as being in a controlled environment, learning how to do it as well, right? I mean, astronauts have to do that as well. But when you really get into real outer space, is it the same? And are you able to
yeah,
condition yourself enough to go, okay, yeah, this is
you can't train for altitude. You just can't. You can train for cardio. You can make sure your body can move miles a
right,
day and carry a pack and everything else. Altitude, you don't know how it's going to be till you get to it. And
right,
so uh, I did okay. And other people in our group did not. And it's just lucky physiology. I don't know, but I did okay. But this night, like, tonight's the night we're going for the summit. And the plan is to start at midnight. And,
oh wow,
so we're in our tents. And when I wake up, about 11:30, I get out of the tent. Like, that's the town of Moshi down below. I mean, it looks like it does
wow.
from like a plane, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say that looks
Yeah.
like an aerial shot of an airplane as you're
Yeah.
flying over it.
That was looking out of the tent. So it is cold. It is real. It is Arctic cold. We have headlamps on so we can see.
Right,
And at midnight, we're going to go about 3 miles or 5 kilometers, if you prefer, toward the summit. And all you can see is, like, basically this halo around your feet. And I stepped out of line just to take this picture. And just getting back into line, I was so out of breath. It took me minutes to be able to fully catch my breath.
wow,
And we start going higher and higher. And the difference between 15,000 feet and 16,000 feet is exponential, right? I mean, the difference between, like, 4,000 feet and 5,000 feet, you're hardly going to notice.
right,
It's really not a thing. But at that height, I mean, I am breathing as deep as I possibly can, and I am as cold as I've ever been. I mean, it is well below zero. It is
Right.
absolutely frigid. And around 3 in the morning, I had to pee, and I unzipped my jacket and I went behind a rock, and I couldn't coordinate getting my zipper together to zip myself back up. It was like I was drunk, but not the fun drunk, right? Just the absolutely dizzy. I
Right.
couldn't figure out the zipper. And
Wow.
one of our guides had to come over and literally zip me up like a child. And I didn't know if I could make it. And
Right.
it's just the coldest, darkest night I've ever been in. And all I could do is just take one step and then another. But then around 4 in the morning, I looked behind me like forever in the distance, and I saw this little glow, way out there on the horizon. And I went, okay, that would be the sun, making its way. And I said, all right, just a few more steps. Let me just go a little bit higher. And then another half hour goes by and it's just a little bit brighter, and finally around 6:30 in the morning, we get to the rim of the volcano. We're not at the summit yet, but the
Right.
actual rim of the volcano. And at that point, I turned around and I saw this sunrise that
That
I will never forget as long as I live. Um, this was a moment, man. This was a moment where I felt Chris right next to me.
right.
There's a Swahili term for the summit of Kilimanjaro. It basically translates to like where God dwells, or the house of God, and the belief is that only those that God deems worthy is allowed up there.
Right.
And in this moment, seeing that sunrise, like the temperature rose like 10 degrees. I mean, it was significantly warmer than when it was night. I could see again. You didn't need your headlamp. I felt Chris right next to me, in this sunrise, this sense of hope. And in this moment, even though the summit was another like 3/4 of a mile and another like 600 vertical feet, I knew I was going to make it. There was no doubt
Right.
whatsoever. Done deal. It's just to finish it. And this was a life-changing moment in something so simple as a sunrise, that high up, that far above the clouds. This is about 18,300 feet, 18,400 feet
Wow.
above the sea level, and
I
just
mean, that just looks like snow-covered something like land. It doesn't even look like clouds. I mean, besides the obvious ones that are sticking high up, but I
yeah,
mean, if you were just to show that to somebody, they think like, "Oh, you're standing on the side of a hill taking a really nice shot of the Arctic or something." It's
it-
it's so inspiring to look at this picture. You can almost feel the warmth of the sun just beaming down on you in the rays. Are just like, wow, that is truly amazing. And what an amazing capture. Like your photography skills were dead on.
I hardly remember. I mean, this is luck. This is
Yeah.
pointing the camera and just going wow and taking the picture. And
Right.
I'll tell you, man, though, but the sense of hope I had right here. This was the most spiritual moment of my life. This was
Right.
being judged by God and deemed worthy, God of the mountain, God of the universe, whatever term you want to use, like something much bigger than me said, "You earned this. You're welcome here, and you got it." And I knew I had it. Like summit's done. And so hard to breathe. I mean, breathing out as hard as you can, breathing in as hard as you can. And we still had about another hour to go. And as we sort of make our way around the mountain, I can see the glaciers that are going to be gone in a few years because of warming. They're going away. But these magnificent glaciers that are at the top,
Wow.
and then finally, I
Wow.
come around this last turn and I see this hill out in the distance, and we start walking toward it, and I know what it is, and then I'm practically dragging my poles behind me, and one step and then the other, and then finally it's right there in front of you, and you reach out and you touch the sign, and my God, man, 19,341 feet, the very top of Africa, uh,
Wow.
Uhuru Peak. And this was great. And this is nice. This is like getting the trophy after the game, but it was not the life changing moment. And we didn't get to stay up here very long. They're like, look, it's too cold. There's too little air. We have to keep moving. We have to get back down. But I knew there was a few things I had to do. And one of the things I wanted to do before I left is take a picture holding my nephew, holding Chris. So they
Right.
knew. So my nephew knew, hey, you were with me, man. You both were
Right.
with me the entire
Wow.
way up. And that's the sign behind me. And it
Wow.
was it was magic, and at that point, I had interviewed years ago for a children's book I worked on. I had interviewed a mountaineer named Mark Inglis, and Mark Inglis was the first man to ever climb Mount Everest without legs. He had two artificial legs, and he got to the top of Mount Everest. And I remember him telling me something I will never forget. He said, "You got to remember, when you get to the summit of any mountain, that's the halfway point, right? That's halfway. You have to get back down or it doesn't count." And I went, wow, he's right. Right.
Right.
He's completely right. And so I realized here, this is halfway. And then halfway to where? Where did
Right.
this journey start? Did it start in college when I took Swahili? Did it start in the 80s when I heard the Toto song Africa that mentioned
Right.
Kilimanjaro? Like, I don't know where it started, but I knew where I was going now once I
Right.
was turning around. And the place I was going was home, right? That's where the journey ends. I mean, it's going to take days. I got to get down and there's
Yeah.
flights and everything else, but that's ultimately where every journey starts and where every journey ends is
Right.
back home. And as you come down, like there's just so much more air below you. Like every step downward is more oxygen, and you
You're going, oh, there it is.
there. Yeah,
That,
it's
where were you? I missed you.
yeah, you really did. But yeah, you come down 1,000 feet, you're like, oh, there's so much more. And you come down another 1,000 feet, and you're
Right.
just like, oh, I could do anything. It's like caffeine, you can breathe again.
Yeah.
And
Now,
and
so
it was
just want to
amazing.
ask real quick. So at the top, now, is there like a tradition that people do something when they're at the top? Because like you said, you were, uh, the gods that deem make you feel worthy enough to get to this point, because there's probably a lot of people who've tried and have not succeeded in getting to this point. You wonder, is there some kind of tradition or things that people do when they do get to this, to kind of, as a thank you of, oh, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to be here.
There was no customs or traditions that were told to us. It's just whatever you chose to do.
Oh,
I said thanks. I took pictures of thank you cards that to everybody who donated, the big donors, and I recorded a video for someone. I took a totem of one of our hikers who couldn't make it up. She was turned down earlier. She said, "This is really special to me. Will you get it to the top?" And I said, "Absolutely."
yeah,
And I wanted to take this picture, the one holding Chris and my nephew
right,
Henry, as a takeaway. There's a saying in any sort of hiking: you should take only pictures and leave only footprints. You know what I mean?
right,
Like, don't leave junk. Don't take stuff.
right,
Just take the pictures. And so for me, that what I got inside of me was so much better than anything else that I could have taken from there.
right,
um, and then you start making your way back down, and you realize what a silly thing to do, right? Climb a mountain. Like, truly, there's nothing up
right,
there like that.
right,
There's no resources or anything like that. um, but you don't do it, and I'm stealing someone else's words right now. These aren't mine, but like, you don't do it so the world sees you. You do it so you can see the world.
right,
And it's true, no one can see you up there from down below, but you
right,
can see all of it, and it is a humbling and amazing experience that you realize, here I am in my 40s at this point. I'm strong enough to do this. I was able to do it, and I get to keep that forever.
right,
Like, no one can ever take that away from me. And
right,
so, you know, I came down from it, and this thing took. I had like a hangover for like 3-4 months after, because I was so singularly focused, and I'm like, now what? And so then I started writing it all down, and
right.
that's what became the book.
Yeah, I mean, what an amazing, opportunity that was presented to you. Like you said, you've thought about it. It was on your bucket list, and out of the blue, somebody just happened to say it, and then you were like, "Wow!" But it's it's inspiring to know that this is something that you took on. You did it. You did it partially for Chris's memory and to do it for him, and you did it for yourself, because this is something you like. We as humans are always trying to always challenge ourselves
Sure.
and do things. And yeah, and I agree with you. The book was truly amazing, and I'm sure the words that are in that book cannot do justice as seeing it with your own eyes and experiencing it. I mean, you are an amazing writer. You reading your books really sucks you in, and you can't put the book down until you finish the whole thing.
Mm.
Like
Well,
usually it
thanks.
takes me like weeks to finish a book. I think I finished that book in days because I was just like it's like watching your favorite TV show. You have to know what's going to happen next because
I didn't
it
die at the
it
end.
was no, yeah, that for people who
Spoilers.
didn't we don't want to do the spoiler in the end, but
Yeah, I survived. Yeah.
he
Well, thank you.
he made it. He made it. He did.
So remember the exorcism I talked about earlier when you talked about writing a book?
Right,
So this was that exorcism. This was me. I had to wring the last bit out of it, and get it all out there. And it's a memoir. So I've never written about myself really before. So
wow,
that was different. But it's really just about like this trip and what it did to me and how it affected me. And
right,
um it was tough to be that vulnerable. You know what I mean?
right,
Because like the only way to do that is to just be that honest, blemishes and all. And
right,
that's what I tried to do. But I think for anyone though, even if Kilimanjaro doesn't call to you, even if mountains don't call to you, like the mountain is still a metaphor, right?
right, yeah,
Quitting smoking is a mountain to climb,
right,
getting in shape or getting a new job or going back to school or any number of things we do to better ourselves, right? Like, so, life throws mountains at us anyway. You know what I
right,
mean? Friends get cancer or you get some sort of, health scare or whatever. You lose your job, any number of things where, life throws these mountains at us. But the more interesting mountains are the ones that we choose to put in front of us.
right,
We say like, this is not going to be easy, but I'm going to do this.
right.
Um, Man, I can't help but cheer for people that do that opt to put a mountain in their way and then climb the damn thing,
Climate,
whether it's literal or metaphorical.
right,
Yeah,
and I mean that's it. Really, like you said, metaphorically, like mountains that are put in front of us, we're all meant to climb those mountains to get to the top to prove to ourselves that we can overcome any challenge that is put in front of us. And some of them might be as difficult as fighting a health issue or drug addiction, alcoholism, anything like even mental health issues is a mountain for people who suffer from mental health every
of
single
course.
day. Every day getting out of bed feels like climbing out of a mountain because
Absolutely.
but by you sharing this story and the inspiration and the journey you went on, it is truly inspiring to let anybody know that when you put your mind to something and you can stay focused and you're passionate enough about it, you can overcome anything that happens. Like you said, there was people that started out this journey with you, but for one reason or another, they could not make the full journey. And you would hope that even the accomplishment that those people did, even though they didn't make it to the top to touch that sign like you did, they still felt like they accomplished something in their lives to even make the challenge. Because how many people would even make attempt to say, "Oh yeah, let's go climb Kilimanjaro." It sounds like a fun week to do.
It's like writing a book, right? Like
Right,
you don't jump to the top. You write a book one word at a time, and you climb a
right,
mountain one
right,
step at a time. And
right,
there's all kinds of life lessons there. But that was the big takeaway is when you choose to put something in front of you and you climb it, you keep that one forever. You get to
right.
say like, well, shoot, I could do that. What else can I do? You can't help
Yeah,
but ask, and it's a worthwhile pursuit. And if you find yourself lost or unsure of what to do next, or, struggling in your life, as we all do from time to time, or sometimes more than time to time,
right,
finding something like that, something that you can say, like, you know what, I'm going to put this thing in my way and
right,
see if I can conquer it. even if you don't get to the top, like you said, you tried and you'll be better for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's worth attempting. Um,
Yeah, no, you never hate yourself for attempting something
right.
and it doesn't necessarily work out. It means that it doesn't mean those people can't go back and try it again. It just wasn't meant for them on this day at this time for them to accomplish this goal. I would be interested to find out if any of those people did go back and try it once again. And
Yeah.
but at the same time, we never hate ourselves for trying something and it didn't work. You only hate yourself for the things that you didn't try to do.
Right. Right.
So that's how long did it take you to get? Obviously, you guys didn't. Um, like obviously, did you? Yeah, I'm sure you didn't go all the way back down to ground zero in one day.
Oh, actually, so we were at the summit for the sunrise.
Right.
We went we went halfway down the mountain because you come down a different way, right? So
Okay.
the way up is 6 days, so it's the longest route, and that's has the most success because you have a chance to acclimatize,
Right.
right? So when you spend that much time at altitude, you get better and better. You have a better
Right.
chance. Coming down though, you don't have to acclimatize. You get to go down as fast as you want.
Oh,
So
okay.
so when we get to that last camp, it was crazy because it snowed the night before, and it, you're near the equator, so down below there's no snow at all. But what
Right.
happens is that the storm like hits the mountain and it hits the cold air and it falls as snow up high. um and so we were down in like a day and a half,
Wow.
because you come down to a different spot after walking something like the total was I think 40 miles is was our
Wow.
total route that we walked, and you get picked up at a different part of the mountain and then brought back to your hotel. And
You
I
sleep
hadn't
3 days.
yeah, so yeah, but I mean, I hadn't showered in, 8 days,
Yeah.
and I remember, my tent mate was almost also my roommate at the
Right.
hotel when we got back into Moshi, and, I was thinking like, "Oh, that shower is gonna be amazing." I mean, Dale, stuff was itching that's never itched before. You know what I mean? Like, 8 days of, like, hoofing it
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
so, but we got back and Brian's like, "Do you wanna shower first?" And I was like, "I kinda don't. Like, I
Right.
don't want to wash this mountain off me yet," Like,
Right.
so he went first and they, the 20-ounce beers over there, they're called everything's called Kilimanjaro. So Kilimanjaro beer, Dale, it was $1 for a 20-ounce beer. And so
Wow.
I gave the guy like a $20 bill and I'm like, "I don't know, man, keep them coming," And so, so Brian gets out of the shower and I hand him one, and then, I go in and I showered, and then we just kept drinking the whole rest of the night. And,
Wow.
I don't even know if we got through that $20 bill, probably not, but it was just one of those things where you're like, some experiences take some time to sink in,
Right.
like it was really special. And I'm so grateful I get to see that part of the world, to
Right.
meet the incredible people.
Right.
The folk, our guides were all locals, who
Right.
I got to speak Swahili with them. We talked about spirituality. We talked about the notion of how the dead in that culture are just as relevant as the living. So at
Right.
holidays and stuff, your passed on relatives are with you, and they
Right.
still have
Right.
influence on you. It's normal.
Right.
And so there's this sort of connection that I thought was kind of beautiful, and I believe in it too. I believe,
Right.
we carry our loved ones with us.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter how long they've been gone.
Yeah. They're just not physically with us.
Right.
Their energy will always be around us, and they peek in from time to time to check in
Sure.
on us, and all that stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, us as humans, we miss the physical person, seeing, talking to them, spending time with them, and stuff like that. But just because they passed on to the other side, it doesn't mean that you know they're forgotten in any kind of way whatsoever. So,
Right.
but that is truly inspiring. And for those that have not read the book, Jeff, you want to tell them where they can find this book or all your
Yeah.
books? And
Yeah. It's so the book's called The Call of Kilimanjaro. I have a copy right here. So there
there
it
it
is.
is.
Yeah, The Call of Kilimanjaro. You can get it at Amazon, Amazon Canada, Barnes and Noble. Any local bookstore could order it too if they don't have it in stock. You can just ask for it. But Yeah, it's that was the book was special, and I haven't reread it, and probably since it came out. It's one of those things where I'm like, one day I'm gonna sit down with this thing, um, but I've been sort of scared to. Like I haven't. So tonight was really great because I when the book came out, I talked about it a lot, and I did a lot of shows and stuff. So it's been years really since I've got
Right.
the chance to talk about it. So thank you for letting me
Uh,
relive that. You know?
I no, I thank you for sharing this experience and allowing people to understand like inspiration behind the book and the story. And like I said, most people would not wake up one day and go, you know what, I just feel like climbing a really big mountain in a different country.
Yeah.
It's but like you said, also too, we use mountains as metaphors as everyday life, like everything, like, oh, I'm not working, so this mountain I have to climb about finding work or health issues and stuff like that. So you physically got to not only climb one of the most famous mountains in the world, but you made it to the top and you did it in a way that, like you said, those photos are truly inspiring. Those are all things that people can look at and just be inspired by the views that you were able to see with your own eyes. So I thank you for taking us on that journey and allowing people to see what it was you were seeing and try to explain it what it was feeling like. And, the message I would like people to take away from this show is nothing is impossible if you put your heart and your passion into it, because you can overcome any obstacle in life. We are not given obstacles to defeat us. We're giving obstacles to challenge us and to show us we can overcome life's challenges. And in your case, a physical challenge.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
So I'm going to give you this opportunity right now, before I let you go. Where can people find you? Where are you going to be? People want to be able to pick up this book in person from you.
Yeah. So my website is my name, jeffbelanger.com or jeffbelanger.com if you're up north. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram at Exploring Legends, and I'm also on YouTube at Legend Tripping. So, you can follow me, but I have no idea where I'm going. I, uh, I have a lot of story nights and stuff that I do, especially in the northeastern United States. I tend to have my books with me at those things, but also my rule at any event ever is if you've got one of my books or something that you'd like signed that you already bought, just bring it. I will never say no to that. Always happy to do it. So yeah, if you get it somewhere else, just bring it along. If you ever meet me or see me at the restaurant or whatever, just wait till I'm done with dinner and then like come on over. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he pops up everywhere. Like we actually saw him walking through an airport like last
That's right.
October.
We
You
did.
know,
I was
his little trip to Canada, and
yeah.
what a fun weekend that was. Like I
That
said,
was a
I
blast. We had such
I
a good
had
time.
so much fun. We had such a blast, and just talking to some of the people there and
Yeah.
meeting everybody up there in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Yeah.
That was so much fun. You are going to be a part of an event that's coming up one
Right.
week from this Saturday.
Paraventure.
Paraventure, you're
Yep.
going to be one of the online speakers. So anybody who would like to catch Jeff talking, what are you going to be talking about that day, or do you know yet?
No, I do. So I actually it's a Q&A. So people on my Facebook page have already posted all the cues,
Okay.
and it's going to be a lot of fun just sort of riffing on that and just sort of sharing stories. It's mostly paranormal stuff. I don't talk about Killy at all. So not on that one. So
So
yeah.
if anybody who would like to be a part of that, see this talk, you can go over to ownyourownpath.net, I believe it is, slash paraventure.
Bear with
Uh,
me.
I did have it. I thought I had it loaded, but I don't have it loaded. Uh, but yes, it's all part of Kelly Hopla's. You can find her on Facebook, on all the social medias, or go to ownyourownpath.net, I believe it is, and all the information's there. You can buy tickets up until April 4th. Online sales tickets end. So this way here, everybody who buys a ticket is also a part of the draw. You can sit comfortably in your pajamas, sit at home, eat your popcorn, drink your beers, and you can watch Jeff and lots of other amazing speakers. You got Shane Pittman, you have Kim Sage. I'm trying to think of the whole list of people. Dave Schrader,
Yeah.
um,
Brad and Tim, Brad
Brad.
Ellis, Brad,
Yep.
Tim Ellis, Brad Blair. I've confused the two, as so many of us do.
Uh,
Um, yeah,
yeah,
Richard
they're
Estep is there.
Richard Estep. Yeah, they're
Tim Sage
so
will be there.
Kim Sage, Nikki
Yep.
Bolton
Yep.
is going to be a speaker. Yeah, no, it is going to be an amazing lineup and an amazing day. If you are in the Michigan area, you can go to the Bay City Theater where they are going to be doing a live event there. They're going to be streaming it up on the big screen. They do have some speakers that are going to be there live and in person. There's going to be, I think there's going to be some vendors at the theater as well. The Paranormal Voice is going to be vendors there. We're going to have a small part of this. So I'm very grateful for Kelly for including us into that. So yeah, if you guys are looking something to do, April 5th, 9 a.m. till 8 p.m., I believe. It's an all online, unless, like I said, you're in Michigan, you can catch it at the Bay Theater. And then I think later on, I don't know if it's going to be that day, but eventually it's going to be streamed onto Beacon TV, Shane Pittman's streaming service. So if you have a ticket, you're going to be able to watch it at any time. So check that out. Show it all the funds go to raise money for autism, which is especially an amazing a cause. You know, we're all in some way, you know, some of us family members, some of us we know people that suffer from autism and stuff like that. So
Hey,
help out other
it's
families.
called a spectrum, right? Which
Right.
means we're all on it. Like, truly, that's what a spectrum means, right? You can't
True.
be off the spectrum. You're on it somewhere. So some
Somewhere down
people,
the road, you know somebody who knows somebody
yeah,
that knows
of
that
course.
person, right?
And we all have our little quirks and things, and yeah, and we all know
Yeah,
people in our lives and friends and family that are
right.
dealing with something, and yeah. So I don't know. My, my main hope with that is let's just normalize it. Like, we're all different. We're all built and wired a little different, and that's what makes the world go round.
Absolutely. And that's what we're doing here, right here at the Seek Advice podcast. I'm going to say thank you to my guest, Jeff. Thank you so much for bringing us on your journey through Kilimanjaro. Pick up the book if you've not picked up the book. Like I said, it is a truly amazing read. It's such an inspiring story. So get it wherever you can. If you can meet Jeff in person, he is a truly amazing guy. Like I said, 11 years I've known him, and no day has ever been the same hanging out with Jeff. Like I said, you never know what's going to come out next, but I'll guarantee you, nobody gets harmed in the end. We all go home and we're all laughing and we're all having a great time. So, everybody on the side, thank you for so much for hanging out with us for this past hour, just a little bit over an hour. But like I said, I knew this is going to be a truly inspiring story. Check out Jeff where you can at any of his amazing events, and you can check him out on TED Talks. He is
Right.
the only person I ever know personally to actually do a TED Talk. And if you don't know what a TED Talk is, it's just maybe Jeff can explain it better than I can because it is coming right out of my mind.
Yeah, so TED is like some of the it's some of the most accomplished people around the world. You know, it means technology, education, and design, but it's just people with that get like 5 to 8 minutes to talk about something they're passionate about. And
Right.
if you look at TED Online or TED Talks, just go to YouTube and look for TED Talks. There's
Yes.
literally thousands of them, and they're all great, and they're on
uh,
any number of subjects. I talked about the Ghost of the White House, and
Right.
that was
Which is
mine. So
another
it's
one of your books that is
yeah.
amazing. You know, the only guy to ever be able to go into the White House to tell a ghost story, which is truly
Yeah.
amazing. We're gonna have to make that into a show because, like you said, not too many people really get that opportunity to get step foot into the White House and to talk not politics but ghosts, which is probably a relief to a lot of those guys. They're like, "Oh, we're tired of politic talk."
Yeah, yeah.
But
It was an
but
experience.
guys, thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dale.
Appreciate you. Stay safe, my friend. And for all those, we are going to be back next week. No, I think, yeah, we're not having a show next Tuesday because it's April Fool's Day. So I'm going to take that inspiring day off and I'm going to do something creative with it. But we will be back the week after that with my guest, Russ. And we're going to talk a little bit, breaking more of the stigma, talking about mental health in men, because that's a stigma we definitely have to break. But everybody, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for hanging out with us. And like I always say, you always matter and we love you. So until the meantime and in between times, have a great evening, everybody. And where am I? I'm here.